three articles. The first one is a pickup from where we were last week. If you want to have a glance at the article, it's Sean Summers again, and I don't know if it was last week or the week before. And it's this need to go back to the past. What do you think went wrong between the original Sean Summers leaving and leaving originally? I think that might be better English. The person that took over in the interim, and this human being asked back. But what do you think the cause was, or some of the causes were, for the collapse of Pick n Pay? And Pick n Pay is not being supported the way it used to be supported. What could have been the problem in terms of making a fantastically working supermarket chain become a dud? What else could have been done in terms of that handover process to avoid the situation they're in now? What was the cause of the situation? How do you take something that is humming and is the Red Bull racing, Formula One racing of supermarkets, to become, I don't know, a Volkswagen with a broken engine trying to make it up a hill? And I think Volkswagen Beetle in that. What was the reason for it? What could be the reason for it? The other one that, and I'm not going to tell you the answer because I want to see if you can see the link between the three. The second one is what's happening to Tiger Brands. And we know that Tiger Brands have been in the news for the wrong reasons, including price fixing. And yeah, a couple of years ago, the polony, I don't know if everyone remembers the polony scare. I don't eat polony, and I can't ever remember eating polony, or if I have, it would have been as a child. This person, what needs to be done to keep the company going on track? And Tiger Brands are doing really well at the moment. What is the link between those two? What can we learn from those? Yeah. My favorite is the same guy that was asked to leave when they did the bread price fixing and were caught by the competitions board. And they've asked him back. Why did they go back to him? What do those two things have in common? The last one is this one here. This guy joining an investment firm. Do you think Discovery would ever welcome him back again?
I think he's on the non.
Why is it not a bad?
I think he's on the non-executive board.
Say again.
He's on the non-executive.
Yeah,
board.
no, he is.
So even though he's leaving, he's still on the board. So he's going to join a. Yeah. I know him. That's why I know. He's joining a.
Oh, fantastic!
So he's joining, I think, as a CEO of a company that's very much into telecommunications, logistics. A DNI. I'm not quite sure. I haven't Googled it, but it's very much.
There it is. Yeah. So the reading is there.
Yeah.
The reading is there.
Yeah.
Do you think they'd invite him back ever? Why is it not a bad thing to see people leave? And I know that a CEO leaving is a major thing. Why is it not always a bad thing?
Well, maybe it's change direction. You need a new sort of energy.
I think every time, go for it, Edel.
As you're saying, I think change. Yeah, change direction, new energy, new focus. You can't keep doing the same. So you need to be quite innovative, and sometimes you need to bring in new energy to create that dynamic.
Absolutely. And I think part of the reason why at that level, we don't mind see people leaving on a good footing, and that's important. Where we don't leave and there's some bad blood, is every time someone leaves and goes elsewhere, it's about learning, it's about developing, it's about growing. And when that person comes back, all that, if he comes back, or should he come back, all that learned skill, all those learned skills, all the growth, all the new abilities, and this new way of thinking will always benefit the business, because they come back with new ideas, they come back growing their own skills base and their own competency base. The reason why I think, let's start with this guy, he's been asked back, is, and the reason for the failure is, I think that their succession planning was dodgy. I think that the leadership development, which is what we're doing tonight, was not up to standard. And I also think the reality is that when you leave like that, you do leave a vacuum. Yeah, no, recording is being done. You leave a vacuum. And that's why these handover periods are important. And we'll see that there is a handover period with this person, and that this person stays on, not that person, this person stays on as a non-executive director. It's that consistency, it's the skills transfer. And I think sometimes organizations neglect it. When last were you on a leadership training program? Who remembers when last they were on a leadership training program? Who can remember being on a leadership training program other than this module? It's something that's neglected. People in leadership positions don't go on leadership development courses. And what happens then is people learn on the job. And your 2014, Joanne, that's 9 years ago. The world has changed in 9 years. The one thing I think you would have noticed 10 years ago, Edel, I promise you that you're not older than me, that I can guarantee you you're not older than me. I'm always the oldest in whatever classroom I am, so don't worry about that. 10 plus, yeah. Yeah, when you get to my age, you don't have enough fingers and toes to count how long ago you were on a leadership development course. I think the reality is my development is reading every day. But if you think of what has changed since 2014, Jan, what are some of the things in this module that you found that has changed, that have changed?
Sorry, I've got a mouthful of food.
Don't eat or drink cappuccino.
Caught me off guard there.
Oh, the lectures just went south. Okay, what are you having for supper?
Fish and chips.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh dear.
What new has happened in the last 9 years?
Sure, it's different because when I did this course in 2014, we spent a lot of time on like emotional intelligence and going through that, and then it just kind of stopped. It just faded away, and we haven't. And these are all new to the this type of leadership, this transformational leadership, this authentic leadership, ethical leadership. All of that you kind of know, but there's no real, you now have a name to it.
Yeah.
You kind
there
of
are no best practices that exist on a page, and that they're there. I mean, they're in this textbook. Leadership globally has changed as well. Absolutely. Yeah. So the truth is, 9 years was a long time ago. 10 plus years. Those are big numbers, and that is a long time ago. So if we look at, and I'm not going to go through this exercise, it's easy when we have a lot of time and we face to face. But in terms of leadership development, So leadership development is really about the organization looking after itself from a sustainability perspective, from a future perspective. And part of that is to make sure that we have the right people in the right place at the right time. But here we talk about the right leaders with the right skills in the right place at the right time. Now, whether it's part of a succession planning process or whether it is part of ongoing development, whether it's mentorship, whether it is telling people to constantly read, making sure that people are exposed to new best practices. It is that continuous process in the organization to ensure that when something happens to a leader or when a leader decides to leave, that the person who takes over has a sense of where the organization's going, what the organization stands for. And what's happened at Pick n Pay is there was definitely a lack of leadership development. It was very, very apparent that one person leaves and Pick n Pay falls off the tracks, and now we're trying to get Pick n Pay back on track again. And it's a lack of leadership development. So when we think of leadership development, I think first of all, it is always within the social context. Organizations are unique from each other. The accepted leadership practices within one organization might not be the same as in another organization. Give me examples of organizations where you've worked, where what was accepted as leadership practice was okay, and now that would never fly in the new organization. And if you can give me examples, that would also be great. Changing organizations, and what was acceptable in one organization certainly wouldn't be acceptable in your current organization. No two organizations are the same, and definitely no two organizations have the same preference in terms of leadership styles. Yeah, open door policy. If it's not cappuccino, it's an aeroplane going across. Oh my goodness me. And I don't know why they're coming past our house, because they almost have to go make a U-turn to fly over my place. So the truth is always open door policy. And your previous organization, Tiang, and I know that it wasn't pleasant. Previous organization, closed door, locks, key and barrel. What other words would we use? Didn't exist. Yeah, the sort of isolation, but where no one sees the leader. There's no, I think you guys have heard this term before, MBWA, management by wandering around. There's no visual leadership whatsoever. And the truth is, what might be okay in one organization won't be okay in another. So that social context and the fact that you have followers and those followers are important becomes an essential part of leadership development in an organization. Now, leader development is where we look at an individual and their skills, their competencies, their ability, as well as those attributes. So what we've done in the module so far would all be focused around leader development, the kinds of best practices that are out there, the kinds of best practices that should be generalizable into a range of organizations, as obviously always tweaked to allow the realities of the organization to also prevail. But leader development is what we've done in this module. Leader development is when you go on an individual course and you are fast-tracked or you are trained, whichever development process they use, for some future position. So if we think, oh my goodness, if we think of leadership development, I think first of all, it is a systemic approach. It's within the organization. And we always look at two elements, cognitive and interpersonal skills. So cognitive will always be the kinds of best practices that get embedded. Interpersonal skills will be your emotional intelligence. And the truth is, emotional intelligence is still, as part of leadership development programs, being taught. And I think we'll never escape from emotional intelligence, because the reality is emotional intelligence is a key element in terms of what makes a leader successful. Can you train somebody to become emotionally intelligent?
I think you can.
Teach someone.
We
Yeah.
on this course
Go, Joanne.
on the course that we did, obviously 10 years ago, 9 years ago, this is exactly what they were doing. So they did a pre-assessment. So they did some tests and stuff, and you got a score. And then after you've completed the course, you redid that test. And the idea was to actually shift everybody on that course. So if if your pre-test was fine, you were fine, you didn't have to move. But the idea was to those that with lower scores would then shift into the higher scores of that course. So I think the majority of people that went on there did. So I think you can definitely learn it.
Oh, without a doubt. It's a best practice. The elements and key in terms of a best practice is that you will always have those elements. Oh yeah, Justine, you're right. I think it's not, unless you are naturally inclined to be emotionally intelligent, it's not something that people learn very easily. I think you get people that have high EQ naturally, but it takes time to teach somebody with low EQ to grow into that position. Reading and understanding your own emotions, controlling your emotions, reading and understanding the emotions in others, being empathetic, managing people in terms of those emotions, don't come naturally. It's not a skill that comes naturally to everyone. There are people that are naturally emotionally intelligent, but it takes time. And yeah, the word I like there is perseverance. So if we look then at leadership development, first of all, it's always based on a needs analysis. And what Joanne has described so wonderfully is exactly what a needs analysis does. You're never going to send somebody on a course that doesn't need to go on a course, or on a training program that doesn't need the training program. Why would you take people that are already emotionally intelligent and go and teach them how to be something that they're already very good at? Because it's a waste of time. So the needs analysis, that pre-testing that you spoke about, Jan, is about isolating those individuals who need the skill. The worst thing you can do in the world is to teach somebody something they already know. It's almost offensive to the person. And it's always part of that term there. Why do we talk talent and not employees anymore? Why do we use the term talent? What makes talent unique and special? Why do we say talent instead of employees or leadership group? Why talent? What is the difference between being organizational talent and an organizational employee? What's talent versus employee? They show potential, yeah. Potential for growth. Talent cannot be grown and developed, or can be grown. Oh, thank goodness. Yes, absolutely, Justine. The difference between being organizational talent and an employee in general is that talent is scarce. Talent is scarce. So we try and create a group of people with scarce abilities, scarce skills, scarce competencies. So the essence of what organizational talent is and what makes them unique is the fact that they are very, very, very special. And we talk about talent being scarce. And the best thing you can be in an organization is on some sort of talent development or talent program, because it's about creating scarcity. And we know that not everyone can be a leader. The second part of that, obviously, is some sort of planning and development process where we look at deficiencies, we find modules, we find interventions that will address those deficiencies. And it's this constant process of assessing that development process, because you need to see outcomes. You need to see the benefits of the money you spend on talent development. And then part of that leadership development is really this idea of being part of a bigger system and seeing how the organization fits into that system. So part of the training is always trying to get people to act more intuitively, to act more in line with the realities of changing the organization, of keeping the organization relevant. And that's why part of leadership development is this idea that we learn from each other, that we place things within the realities of the organization, and we understand what the current issues are and what the current best practices are around leadership development. We should not have autocrats in the world anymore. If you have a proper leadership development and leader development program, you should not have autocrats. And as Tianga said to us, she knows a lot of autocrats and has worked with a lot of autocrats. I would always hope that people don't work for autocrats, but they're not going to disappear. Well, that's exactly it, Edel, and it's called, I don't know if you guys have ever come across this term, and it's something that goes hand in hand with autocrats. Kruger-Dunning syndrome, or Dunning-Kruger, depending on the book you read. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the Kruger-Dunning syndrome. And all autocrats fall into this category without fail. Anyone heard of Kruger-Dunning before? Dunning-Kruger? See people sneaking into the classroom. Okay. Kruger-Dunning is the notion that people who are incompetent see incompetence in others, but have a blind spot to their own incompetence. So people who are incompetent, and whether it's a leader, whether it is an autocrat, these are individuals that see themselves as being highly skilled and see everyone else as being incompetent and unintelligent. It goes so hand in hand with autocrats, because an autocrat's notion always is, I will tell you what to do. If I wanted your input, I would ask for it. And autocrats don't ask for input. Kruger-Dunning is a wonderful, wonderful syndrome. And I promise you, when you read Kruger-Dunning, you'll realize very rapidly that you work with a lot of people who suffer from this Kruger-Dunning syndrome. Yeah, welcome to my neighborhood. Clearly, we have a racetrack as well now. Kruger-Dunning. Has anyone searched for it while we were doing this? Truthfully, if you read there, you will, yeah, you will realize that you work with a lot of people who suffer from Kruger-Dunning, or Dunning-Kruger as they have it here. Yeah, greatly overestimate their own knowledge and competence, and then see everyone else as being dumb. I don't know what the technical term for that is. Anyone work with someone like that? With Dunning-Kruger effect or Dunning-Kruger syndrome? Yeah, now you know what to think. Just when you run into them, go, well, you bloody DK. It's so screwy when you work with people who are limited, and the fact that they exaggerate their own abilities and completely see everyone else as useless, as incompetent, as unintelligent. Sorry, Justine. Does anyone here think they suffer from Dunning-Kruger? I wouldn't admit that right now, but it would be interesting to see if anyone is honest with themselves. Anyone here suffer with the Dunning-Kruger effect? You're not going to admit it, because part of Dunning-Kruger is not admitting that you suffer from the effect. The truth, though, is you will work with people like that forever and ever. And I promise you, when you work with an autocrat, the Dunning-Kruger effect is at play. Tiang, you've worked with autocrats. Is that a fair comment? Tiang's gone to sleep. Sorry, Tiang, I'm picking on you. So in terms of leadership development, these are the different leadership development tools. I'm not going to go through these. You'll be able to work through them yourself. I want to get to the next bit. All of them, but they're different elements. They're all self-explanatory. Coaching and mentoring. I think all of you have been exposed to coaches and mentors. The difference to me in terms of a coach and a mentor is that often a mentor also has the duty to plug you into networks, etc., to look after your long-term successes. You can have a glance at that. Yeah. And then you can see the benefits. Experiential learning, it's about concrete experiences. The key thing in terms of that is concrete experiences in terms of the right way to do it. The problem with autocrats is that it's worked for them in the past because people live in fear, and they too narrow-minded to see that. Here, the ideal is you expose somebody to what the best practice is, and then you get the person to obviously spend time on figuring out how they are limited in terms of that best practice, and that kind of reflective observation is there. And hopefully you get to the point of active experimentation, to the reality that this becomes your way of doing things. Reflection, you can have a glance at reflection. Can I just ask, who spends time on reflection every year in their organization? Looking at what's worked, what's not worked, what can we change, what should we change? I look after the supervisors at Varsity College Maritzburg, and every year we have an exercise to do reflection. What has worked? What hasn't worked? What do we keep? What do we throw out? It's a wonderful learning experience. Oh, that's impressive, Debs. You do it quarterly. That is hell of impressive. And to me, the usual reviews are so limited sometimes. And Tiang, I'm assuming that the kind of organization, very much so. And Tiang, I would imagine the kind of organization you work for. I've lost my train of thought. Oh gosh. In terms of the reviews, would do a 360-degree review. Even the 360-degree review is not fantastic, but it gives you a better idea of than a manager simply reviewing an employee. Yeah, I'm here. Debs, I think you've disappeared. Can everyone hear me, or have I disappeared?
We can hear you.
Just say yes. You can. Okay, Debs, I think you might have disappeared. Okay. Deborah, are you back? Okay. So in terms of reflection, an important part of leadership and leadership development and your own leadership skills, I'm very impressed that so many of you do the reflection thing. Who doesn't do the sort of reflection bit in an organization where you just truck along and you assume everything is fine, where you don't critically sit back and assess the realities of your year, of whatever had happened before, whether, 4 months or quarterly every 3 months? That is very impressive, Mads. So a concept that has become quite significant in terms of organizations and has received a lot of attention in the recent past has been mindfulness. Who has heard of mindfulness, and what does mindfulness mean to you? Before we read any of the stuff on the slide, what is the essence of mindfulness? And if you don't practice it, the author is Kabat-Zinn, Kabatzinn, John Kabat-Zinn, and we should see come up on mindfulness. You definitely. I think it's a bit more than that. It's a bit more than that, but it's part of that. Guys, please do yourself a favor. If you've not heard, that's it. Oh, Justine, that is a wonderful description. It's being present in the moment. If you've not seen anything from Kabat-Zinn, there are lots of examples here. Yeah, there is the website. It should open. Do yourself a favor and spend a bit of time looking at his stuff. It is, yeah, being present in the moment. It is honestly the best description in terms of what mindfulness is. The other one, yeah, have a glance at that one as well. It's about constant reflection, but one of the things people do, and I think it's a bit more than that, Kim, one of the things that people do is they ruminate. I don't know if anyone knows what rumination is. Ruminate. People ruminate. I don't know if you've heard the term before. No, it's a little bit different to that. Ruminate. Let's hope Google gives us a nice definition here. Okay. Now there are two elements of rumination. Is the positive element where you think long and hard about, and there is the negative element. And what rumination is, for me, is somebody cuts you off in traffic today and you replay the incident in your head, and you have different strategies, and 2 days later, and it's the cycle of irritation. It's ruminating does. It prevents you from being mindful. It prevents you from being in the moment. It prevents you from being present in the moment. So what mindfulness does is it is a focus on bringing you realities of now, but you being in those realities. Often what happens in organizational crises is that there's so much going on, and there's such significant panic going on, and I don't really want to talk about my own research, but my study, one of my model definitely focused on mindfulness. What happens is when there's so much happening, people are panicking and running around like headless chickens. Somebody who's mindful, sorry, would be within all that panic and would be dealing with the realities in the present. And it is a bit of introspection. I don't know if anyone's ever been doing something that should be really pleasurable and really joyful and enjoyable, and something had happened the day before, and instead of sitting, and this is what I used to do, is I used to rerun battles until I went on this mindfulness thing. I used to rerun battles in my mind. And I remember one day sitting next to the sandpit with my baby and playing in the sand, but I'm not there. I'm refighting and recalculating my fight, or my conclusion, or the way I should have rather reacted in a situation. And here I'm sitting doing something that is really, really fun, playing in the sand with my Lat Lamiki, when in reality my mind was fighting battles elsewhere. I don't know if anyone does that, and all of us do. It's exactly that, and it's a true example. And I realized then that I'm saying I'm here with Hayden, and I mean, this kid is only 2 once, and I'm busy. My mind is elsewhere, but my hands and my feet and my everything else is playing. It's an awful bit to do. Anyone else do that? Oh yeah, postnatal is really awful. Lichelle, that's, yeah, boy, go and look at cupboards and stuff. There's so many there's so many examples of bringing you into the present. Anyone else? And it's something that you can unlearn. It is something that you can unlearn. And when you go on the mindfulness course, they use the example of a grape and putting, not a grape, a raisin, and putting a raisin in your mouth and on your tongue. Now, normally we would just gobble raisins, and they allow you to experience a raisin differently by being in the moment. Now, I'm not a big fan of raisins, but it's astonishing what the exercises do. Yeah, absolutely, Justine. You can unlearn it. And the quicker you unlearn it, in my mind, the better your life becomes. It's about being in the present. And again, I love that definition. Well, it's a very nice definition. So part of mindfulness is to challenge your own thinking. It is about being able to take in information and make sense of information, and getting rid of previous beliefs. And for me, it's about the thinking, but the big thing is this. It's that bugger there. This increased awareness of involvement and in processes, and those processes could be something special. It could be sitting on the beach and taking in the whole experience, instead of fighting a battle at work, or worrying about work, or ruminating about work, having thoughts replay in your mind. It is a wonderful, wonderful thing to learn. And part of it is learning to become intuitive. Oh, Kim, without a shadow of a doubt, stress does that. Stress, and we know that stress is a real killer, but stress really does that. And it takes you away from being in the present. It takes you away from sitting next to a sandpit with your 2-year-old and having the fun that you should be having, because it's an amazing experience. My kid is 17, and I would give anything to sit in a sandpit playing sand castles and building stuff with him again. And it's never going to happen. And I missed that moment because I was fighting a battle elsewhere.
I think the amazing part about that, Henny, though, is that you've recognized it.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think
absolutely.
so often we don't, and it takes something like now that that you recognize it. The hard thing is, I was saying stress does this to you, but it's also almost like a defense mechanism when you're so stressed. You shut
Oh
everything
yeah,
out.
no, it's an escape. It's an
It's like
escape.
that complete shut out. You can't even appreciate what you're doing. In my previous
Yeah.
job, not even knowing it, I stopped hearing birds tweet. I stopped hearing
Yeah.
birds. And I left the job, and 3 months later, it was a specific place that I used to go to every day, to the gym. And 3 months later, I went to the gym because it was further from the house, and went back to the gym. And I sat with a friend and said, "Listen to those birds." And he said to me, "Kim, that's every single day, all day here." And the tears just came down my cheeks because I realized that I'd forgot, or I couldn't hear the birds tweet anymore.
Wow, that is brilliant. I mean, yeah, can I tell you how sad it is? This morning I had a lot to do, and we have an amazing bird life in my garden, and we've got new birds that are mating, and they have these mating calls. I must have stood for 10 minutes listening to these guys, and it's wonderful. It's and it is. Sometimes people don't hear it because they're ruminating, because they're fighting battles. That is such a nice example. To take it further is this idea of the mindful organization. And I know these slides are very busy, but they're very busy for a very specific reason. And if you can't put one and one together, it's never going to make sense. But they're busy for a very specific reason. And I'm not going to go beyond that in terms of what I said earlier about, what my slides serve in a certain place. But the mindful organization is where everyone practices mindfulness, is where there's panic and there's a crisis, where people are in the moment, and you build some sort of capacity to deal with crises instead of running around like headless chickens. This idea of a mindful organization is such a new concept. And if you look at what the consequences are there, is that it allows you to deal with the realities of the world and this crazy environment where you cannot even predict what will happen in a year's time, in an hour's time, let alone a year's time. You can have a look at the mindful organization. It is really about dealing with things rationally. It's about dealing with risk. It's about dealing with crises. It is about looking at situations and not getting overwhelmed by those situations. And you can have a glance at this, and I'm not going to go through all of these slides. You can have a glance and a read of that. Okay. We've got 4 minutes. Any comments, any questions, and you can read through those couple of last slides. There's nothing much I can explain. Any comments about mindfulness? Who thinks they would need some sort of reading, some sort of course on mindfulness? And I've given you cupboards, and I'm not offering to run a mindfulness course. And I'm not qualified enough to do that. Who could see that they would benefit from mindfulness? Obviously, Just be mindful about what we do next week. I honestly can't remember the questions, but we'll do a bit of a work together through those and make predictions. I'm going to stop recording. Sorry.